We're so glad to have you all here. We have a really big packed agenda today, a lot of great speakers, and we're really looking forward to getting into it. We are going to start with a little bit of fun and an opening from Pastor Bains and Leslie Bacho. We'll be going over kind of our policy principles, and then we'll launch into some of our specific issues. We have a great panel on school meals for all with some of our key state and national leaders on this issue. And we'll be talking about summer meals and EBT and our partners at the YMCA. We'll cover a little bit about SNAP and CalFresh and how that program can be made more equitable and accessible. And then we'll talk about the sources of food that are supporting the food bank, as well as our efforts in food rescue. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to start with some trivia. In 1974, when our doors first opened, what was the food bank called? The second question is, what is the farthest location our trucks travel to deliver food? And perhaps trickiest of all, what is the furthest location that our trucks travel to deliver that food? So we're going to give you a moment to answer. And then, Zia, will you let me know when we have enough answers that we're going to pop it up? Because I don't think I see that part. Getting good responses?
They're trickling in. We have about half of the participants right now.
I should warn you, there are no major prizes associated with this trivia contest. This is just fun. How are they doing?
I'll be honest, it's all over the board here. I think we've got some Second Harvest staff members weighing in heavily. Okay, we're about to wrap up. One more minute, folks.
Oh, let's just give it another few seconds.
All right, a few more seconds.
Last year we did all kinds of trivia too, so we do enjoy throwing this in. It also gives people a chance to catch up with us. Ooh, those answers are all over the map. Okay, 50% of you got it right. It is true that our original name was the Food Bank, Inc. of Santa Clara County. It was formed in 1974 by Economic and Social Opportunities and was incorporated as a nonprofit agency in 1979. In 1988, the San Mateo County Food Bank and Santa Clara County Food Banks merged to become Second Harvest of Santa Clara and San Mateo, Second Harvest Food Bank of Santa Clara and San Mateo. And then we finally went ahead and shortened the name to Second Harvest of Silicon Valley. The Inc., incidentally, I am told by people who were there at the time, was a bit of a last minute panic. People had not really thought through what you called a nonprofit, so that's how Inc. ended up in the first name. What is the farthest locations our truck traveled to deliver food? It's a really close tie, but you got that one too. It's St. Anthony's Church in Pescadero. They opened in 2009. They serve 80 households every month, and most of their farm workers are, most of their clients are local farm workers, and it's 57 miles from our main warehouse to their location. The third question, let's see how you did here. This one you did not get. The correct answer was over 220,000 whole turkeys and chickens. We distribute that many in November and December, and our programs team has to put together a very elaborate process to understand which families actually want turkeys or want chickens. We have a selection now because a lot of people in our communities don't really like turkeys. It's not part of their tradition. They'd rather have chickens, and they also potentially fit better into smaller apartments with maybe not a large amount of storage. Our food sourcing team has to start purchasing this product in April to ensure that we have the right supply. So I'm trying to get out of the poll now. Okay, I think I did. So continuing on, I wanted to introduce our lead speaker, Pastor Paul Bains. Pastor Bains is a second-generation Peninsula resident and community organizer who's deeply rooted in all aspects of our local community. Since WeHOPE's inception in 1999, Pastor Bains and the organization have responded to the unique needs of East Palo Alto and its neighboring cities by supporting homeless and marginalized populations. They pursue innovative solutions that involve nonprofits, for-profits, and government, such as creating the country's first RV safe parking program, advocating for parcel taxes that have reduced crime, and partnering with private donors to create a factory that will produce modular homes and create local jobs. Pastor Bains' commitment to serving the community extends beyond his work with WeHOPE. He's a police chaplain for the East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park police departments, serves as the pastor for St. Samuel Church, and sits on numerous boards, including City Team, Able Works, Peninsula Healthcare, and Second Harvest of Silicon Valley. Please welcome Pastor Bains, who will provide some reflections on the work that's been done during the pandemic. Thank you so much, Pastor Bains.
Well, Tracy, thank you very much for having me. And of course, anything that has to do with Leslie and Second Harvest, we are definitely and want to be considered. I'm a Warriors fan, but I want to be an authentic fan for, if you can read that, for Second Harvest Food Bank. I truly do believe in the work that has been done and is being done under the great leadership of Leslie Bacho here. The way it has impacted the pandemic, many of you already know, it particularly has disproportionately impacted people of color and the communities that I lived and worked in. You know, if I look at East Palo Alto, for instance, pre-pandemic data for our serving the families was we were serving 300 unduplicated families on a monthly basis. We are now well over 900 families. And so this pandemic has really impacted the leadership of our community. It has impacted the families of our community, the very fabric. And I cannot tell you enough on how grateful WeHOPE is to partner with Second Harvest Food Bank, because we're there in the trenches, and our people, our staff, people come up to me on the street and says, thank you for the food donations. And we definitely give the credit to Second Harvest Food Bank, because without you, Second Harvest Food Bank, it would not be possible to the degree that it is. And so we are tremendously grateful for this relationship that we have. So it gives me a great pleasure and a distinct honor to introduce this wonderful leader that really needs no introduction, I don't think, because she's very, very well known, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. So Leslie Bacho has, she joined Second Harvest Silicon Valley in 2017 after serving as the Chief Operating Officer of the San Francisco and Marin Food Bank for over 19 years. So this is in her blood. Since taking the helm as CEO of Second Harvest, one of the largest food banks in the entire nation, the organization has grown significantly and has increased its impact, both with the number of people served and the total pounds of food distributed. And we love it when we get our list of how much pounds that we've received as an organization, because we don't even believe it's been that much. And it's like, wow, that's a whole lot. And we're just one of the many agencies that Leslie has. So under Leslie's leadership, Second Harvest has actually also sharpened its focus on reducing barriers and actually providing the food when, where, and this is really important, how people need it, resulting in more of a client-centric approach to food banking. So Leslie has served in various leadership capacities with National Hunger Organization, Feeding America. She serves on the board of the California Association of Food Banks and is a member of the Santa Clara University Center for Food Innovation, because she has all these creative ideas and everybody wants them, and entrepreneurship on the advisory board. She also has been selected to be among Silicon Valley's Business Journal 2020 Women of Influence honorees. Leslie has earned her MBA from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and her BA from Duke University. She lives in San Francisco with her husband and her 2 children. So please, let's give a silent welcome round of applause for this great leader as I introduce to you and present to some Leslie Bacho. Leslie.
Thank you, Pastor Bains. I really appreciate that very nice introduction. And I'm just so grateful for the really incredible partnership we have with Project WeHOPE. As you described, all of this work we do in partnership, and certainly you guys have been just a critical partner. And I'm grateful to Pastor Bains for all he contributes to Second Harvest as a board member, as a thought partner, as just a real relationship builder, and so much more. I also want to say thank you to our advocacy team for organizing today and for all of you for joining us. So many of you are deeply partnered in this work with us, and we are really grateful. Our mission here at Second Harvest is pretty simple. It's to ensure that everyone has access to nutritious food. So how do we bring that mission to life? And you can go to the next slide. As I mentioned before, all of this work is truly done in partnership. We partner with over 300 nonprofits, including partners like WeHOPE, and distribute food at over 900 sites across Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. Really, anyone that's distributing charitable food in those 2 counties is likely getting some of that food, if not most of that food, from Second Harvest. And so some of these are after school programs, there's soup kitchens, there's shelters that may be providing meals. And then the majority of food still goes out as groceries. And that is also in partnership, often with K through 12 schools, community colleges, affordable housing sites, faith-based organizations, and other nonprofits. Like Pastor Bain described, typically, we are really trying to reach people where they already are. Of course, also, a big part of the work that we do to fulfill our mission is the work that Tracy and her advocacy team do to strengthen our programs and policies at the local, state, and federal level. So like I said before, our mission is simple, but of course, how we do this work is certainly not easy. This is kind of a snapshot of what it takes to bring nutritious food to our community. Most people are really surprised just at the scale of our network. You know, I often let people know that, every single week, actually this slide says month, but every single week we receive more than 90 tractor trailer loads of food. And then that goes right back out to the community. Even before the pandemic, we had a food insecurity crisis here in Silicon Valley. We estimated that about 1 in 4 people were in need of food assistance, and we were serving 250,000 people every month. Of course, everything changed very dramatically during the pandemic. We saw a tremendous increase in need, really just in a matter of weeks, and we kind of doubled the amount of food we were providing overnight. We have a food connection hotline, and the numbers of that hotline increased more than 5 times as people who were, for the most part, often coming to us for the very first time, and we connected them with our food distribution sites and also with CalFresh. We really changed how we were providing the food. Pre-pandemic, our model was really focused on this kind of farmer's market style where clients could walk up and select what they wanted. And we changed to drive-through distributions in order to keep people safe. And you can see from the slide, we have over 130 of those drive-throughs now. And we also started doing home delivery to seniors and other folks who are homebound, which we've seen just be a really valuable service that we hope to continue after the pandemic. So really at the peak, we were just providing food to 500,000 people every month. That has leveled off to about 400,000 people per month now. We've seen that number pretty consistently for about the past 6 months, and we're anticipating that we'll probably have to maintain that level of service just for the foreseeable future. What's really been encouraging during this pandemic is the support we've received from the community. Like Pastor Bains described at his site, we had so many of our partners, of course, and so many of you that are on this call really step up and help us double the amount of food we were providing. We are also very dependent on volunteers, both at our warehouse and at our distribution sites. Of course, in the beginning, when shelter in place went into effect, we lost a lot of those volunteers, but we were able to have the National Guard on site. We were also able to, thanks to the city of San Jose, have the San Jose Conservation Corps on site. They continue to provide a really important source of labor for us. And a lot of our community volunteers are back, and they provide the equivalent of 100 full-time staff. So you can go to the next slide. Just as we're thinking about what the future looks like, as I described before, we don't really see our numbers ever getting back to those pre-pandemic levels. We know that for so many of our neighbors, this pandemic has meant months of lost wages. You know, we hear heartbreaking stories from clients who maybe were saving for their kids for college, or maybe they were saving to be able to move out of the place they're sharing with another family to a larger place. And just in a matter of months, they had to wipe out what took, you know, years for their family to save. A recent survey of our clients said that 60% of people had less than $100 in savings. So we know that it's going to take a long time for people to recover from this kind of deep economic setback. And, you know, we're also likely reaching a lot of people we should have been reaching before the pandemic, either because they didn't know that we existed or they were resistant to asking for help. And so we're anticipating this need for food assistance will remain high for a long way to come. In terms of how we'll meet the need moving forward, we know that we need to keep telling the story of the widening income inequality in our community and the challenges people face to meet their basic needs. As Pastor Bains said, you know, this pandemic has really disproportionately impacted people of color, low-wage workers, so many individuals and families in our community who really need our help. Of course, we're going to need the community's continued support in terms of donations and volunteers. And then we're going to keep working with policymakers. You know, we saw many improvements to programs like CalFresh and other benefits during this pandemic. We still see lots of improvements that can be made there, and we'll be continuing to advocate for those. And then, of course, we're also having to look at our own operations. This has really stretched our entire network and certainly our facilities here at Second Harvest. We're kind of continuing to be in this emergency response mode, and we're really looking at how we can create the infrastructure again to sustain this for the long run. In terms of how we do this work, we're also trying to get better inputs from people experiencing food insecurity and our partners on what sort of model we'll go back to. It will probably be some combination of this, you know, client choice farmers market style, and then also these drive-through distributions, which also provided a lot of just convenience and anonymity to folks that we know some people would like to continue. And then we're going to continue to really work on trying to influence food access policies at the state, local, and federal level. Again, I'm just grateful to all of you on this call for joining us in this work and for your ongoing partnerships. We absolutely could not do this work without you. So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Really appreciate the introduction from both you and Pastor Bains that really highlights a lot of what is going on in the community today. Of course, the purpose of this event every year is to share our legislative priorities, but every year we do try and start from principles. And 3 of our 4 principles are the same this year, and we've added 1 new one. So that's the last one, so stay tuned so you can see what got added. Our first principle is that access to healthy food is a human right. And, you know, we believe food is foundational to community health, economic stability, and no human being should be deprived of the food they need to thrive. So the policies we support are always focused on increasing access to food for our community. Our second principle is no surprise to anyone who's ever been to any of our events. We believe all children should receive free school meals. It has guided a lot of our advocacy for the last few years as we worked at the county level to increase access and co-sponsored a bill at the state level in 2019. We believe free meals provide equity and community and ensures that every child has the nutrition they need to learn and thrive. We have a panel with some of our key partner leaders, and you'll get to hear about some of the major successes at the state level, as well as our federal advocacy and the implementation work that still needs to be done. Policies should be evaluated for their impact on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're committed to examining systems, policies, and practices to ensure that they support racial and ethnic diversity and are inclusive of all. You'll see that much of our policy advocacy around CalFresh is grounded in increased access to groups like immigrants, the formerly incarcerated, and other marginalized groups. Here's our new principle: community voice matters. We added the principle this year because our communities need access to the electoral process to ensure that their needs are heard and met. Second Harvest will support nonpartisan efforts at the local, state, and federal levels to increase access to voting and encourage voter registration. So these are our core principles, and I can take a question or two if people have one. Otherwise, we can launch into our panel. I'll give just a moment to see if anyone has any burning policy principle question. Okay, we'll also have time for questions at the end. So I'm going to pass it off to Zia for our Meals for Kids panel.
Good morning, everyone. As Tracy mentioned earlier, one of our main policy priorities is and has been universal free school meals for California children. And we were not alone. After years of advocacy, along with many diverse stakeholders, including our Meals for Kids panelists today, our dream became a reality when universal school meals was incorporated in the 21-22 California state budget. Looking forward, all qualified public and charter schools will be able to provide 2 free meals a day to all children, reducing stigma, building community, and ensuring all children have the nutrition they need to learn and thrive. We at Second Harvest are continuing to work with our local school districts to make sure that they have adequate infrastructure and support to implement this historic initiative. Today, we are grateful to have 3 panelists whose organizations are fundamental in driving child nutrition policy here in California and across the nation. Starting with Alexis, I now invite our panelists to unmute and introduce yourselves.
Well, hello, my name is Alexis Bylander, and I am a senior child nutrition policy analyst with the Food Research and Action Center. We are a national nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. that advocates on behalf of the federal nutrition programs like breakfast, school breakfast and lunch. And thank you to the Second Harvest of Silicon Valley team for the invitation today and for all the advocacy that you do, particularly around Meals for Kids.
Thank you, Alexis. Tia?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tia Shimada. I am the Director of Programs with Nourish, California. And we are a nonprofit policy advocacy organization that works to make sure that everyone in California has access to the food that they want and need. We particularly focus our efforts on our fellow Californians who face the starkest inequities and are experiencing the greatest hardship. I just want to say a big thank you to Zia and Tracy and the entire food bank team for giving me the chance to connect with all of you today. Looking forward to the discussion.
Jess?
Hi, I'm Jess Bartholow, and I am the Chief of Staff for Senator Nancy Skinner, who's the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, and a California Association of Food Banks alumna, and a longtime anti-hunger, anti-poverty worker. As you guys all know, I'm happy to be here and to talk about this victory and next steps.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, panelists. We will have time for questions afterwards, but we're going to start off with a couple of questions. Jess, you have been a fierce advocate for underserved populations for a long, long time. And before your work with the Office of Senator Nancy Skinner. Please describe your personal path towards advocating for universal school meals and how your priorities converge with Senator Skinner's vision?
Sure. So, I think people who know me know that I grew up poor. My dad was a veteran. My mom did piecemeal work after she had a conviction that kept her from being able to do her chosen profession as a bookkeeper. Check fraud, writing a bad check because we were too poor to pay the rent. So our story is a story that so many Californians, so many people experience. And for us, we didn't really know much about the programs. My dad was illiterate. My mom was very busy and maybe afraid to apply for programs as well. We lived in a small town and we were all very ashamed of being poor. And so we didn't apply for school meals. We went hungry. I thought you had to pay for everything. I loved the smell of the cafeteria. I loved the food. It looked beautiful and delicious. And instead of being able to eat it, I brought the same apple in a brown bag day after day so that people thought that I had a lunch and I didn't eat it. And I always kind of pretend like, oh, I'm so busy. I'm going to go outside and play sports and do these other things. And, had really a great many days and weeks and nights of hunger as a child. And I can just say from that experience, it's a very demeaning and cruel thing to experience as a child. And it wasn't until I was a junior and I had been in the principal's office a couple of times, junior in high school, that I found out about the free school meal program. And that day when I did, I remember it as being like this moment in which I said, well, I can't, I was getting in trouble because I was upset about this book that I had to pay for, and it was $10. And I said, I can't, that's my lunch money. And I worked all weekend at the flea market for that lunch money. And the principal said, well, don't you know can't your parents help you? And I said, no, they don't have anything to eat themselves. And she said, well, don't you know about the free meal program? And I just remember being so happy there was something to help, and so mad that I didn't know. And that all this time, it's just like all that time without food. So you can imagine, coming up through the work, I really did want to leave poverty. I wanted to pretend like I wasn't poor anymore. I wanted to just run away from it all. But when welfare reform happened in our United States Capitol, it was the biggest lie I had ever heard. And I was so disturbed by it. And I left my path in academia in my PhD program to become a welfare rights organizer and to help register women to welfare recipients to vote and hire welfare recipients to do that. So that's, the beginning of how I became a welfare rights organizer and anti-hunger organizer at Alameda County Community Food Bank.
No.
But I just want to say I was not convinced about universal meals for a long time, even though it would have helped families like me. And I thought we should prioritize the poorest and that we couldn't go bigger. And it really was the governor when he was mayor of San Francisco and his vision for making a universal meal and why we could do it and why we needed to, that inspired me to think differently. So when we got the chance and coming in to work for Senator Skinner, I learned that she had the same goal. This is something she had always wanted to do. And she thought, well, maybe there wasn't support for it. But when we looked around, we saw Gavin Newsom as the governor. We saw Chair Atkins, Speaker Rendon. We started to think that maybe, Tony Thurmond, as superintendent, that maybe we had the stars aligned and the opportunity to do this. So that's a little bit of story that helped kicks us off with the inspiration for this panel.
Thank you, Jess. Really appreciate the sharing your personal story. Tia, Nourish California has been key in identifying policy gaps to create innovative policy, yet always keeping the realities of implementation in mind. Please describe the implementation of universal school meals in California. Your perspective, how is it going? What steps do we need to take to improve access? and your work to bring universal meals to the childcare setting. Thank you.
Of course. So first, I will add my voice to the resounding chorus to recognize just what an incredible and historic commitment has been made by Senator Skinner and the state legislature and Governor Newsom. Statewide universal meals is a game changer. Simple as that. And I think we also need to acknowledge and really start to tackle the tremendous work that's ahead to make sure that that historic change becomes a sustained on the ground reality for all kids across California. I've only had 5 minutes. I've had my cup of coffee, so I'm going to hit on a couple of points that we think are most critical to successful operation and implementation. And then I always appreciate opportunities for extended discussion offline if anyone wants to connect. There are so many factors at play. So I think, just some that rise to the top. The first is the need for a guaranteed level of state funding. The existing state meal reimbursement and the forthcoming reimbursement for universal school meals, it's a capped appropriation in the state budget. And what that can mean and what it's meant in the past is that when school meals have a greater than expected reach, which is a good thing, schools can get shortchanged. They can end up with a lower per meal reimbursement than they were anticipating. And that kind of instability is tremendously hard for school meal programs. And ultimately, it's really hard on kids. And I think we've all been living day after day in this world where the unexpected happens. And in order to give kids the access that they deserve, we really want to make sure, and we're hoping that the reimbursement can be a guarantee and not subject to change. So I think the challenge with the capped appropriation is that when the meal programs perform better than expected, reach more kids than expected, we don't want schools to be penalized for that. And we also know, and I'm not going to step out of my lane here, we also know that the state funding is meant to be supplemental. And so growing and sustaining that foundational federal dollar is incredibly important. And we'll continue to advocate for expansion to universal options like community eligibility at the federal level. But Alexis is here. She's got all that federal expertise. So I will not say any more about that. We also have been hearing from school districts and from schools across the state a real need for detailed guidance and for robust technical assistance. And the kind of questions that we're hearing coming up are, what am I supposed to do on a minimum day? Is it really all kids in all kinds of charter schools that have this meal guarantee? What about transitional kindergarten? And what exactly am I required to do when it comes to those federal universal meal provisions like P2 and CEP? So I think just recognizing that, whenever there is a sea change like we have before us, there's just a lot to tackle when it comes to getting the details in hand for the folks that need to roll out these programs. And whether that additional detail comes through additional legislation or comes through administration, like I know the work being headed up by CDE, we just know that those are the kinds of questions that folks are grappling right now as they look toward implementation in 2022-23. And then I'm gonna raise something that I'm just gonna preface it now. It probably sounds really strange because as a state, we have made this incredible commitment that every kid gets offered a meal, 2 meals for free every day. There is still a need for us to collect information about student household income. And that's because that income data is tied to the federal reimbursement. Schools can't get that federal reimbursement without knowing something about students' income. And we lack a statewide online system for that in California. We have so many other systems that allow us to tap into data, but not for this critical program. And it's not just about reimbursement for school meals. It's also about when emerging programs like PEBT become available, we could have reached so many more children so much more quickly if we weren't trying to cobble together data from 10,000 schools and 1,000 school districts in our state. So we do need an online, easily accessible system that's available to parents, to school districts, and to state administrators so that we can do the back end work that's necessary to make these programs run without additional burden on schools and on families and kids. Okay, I know I've only got a few minutes. The I see you giving me the eye.
No, keep going. It's all good.
I'm gonna pivot from the world to K-12 and talk a little bit about the childcare in our state. And we are really excited to be co-sponsoring legislation this year that would do two things for our youngest learners in California. And the first is to make sure that childcare providers across our state can get fair funding for all the meals that they serve. Right now, under state law, childcare providers can only receive state reimbursement for 75% of the meals they serve. And that statute is tied to a harmful and biased legacy of policies that devalues the work predominantly done by women and women of color. The inequities in funding hurt the childcare workforce, harm the kids in their care, and we know California can do better. We need to get this codified inequity off the books and make sure that providers are getting the resources they need in order to take care of the kids in their charge. And the second aim of the legislation is to make sure that more kids have ready access to nutritious free meals in childcare. And so mirroring the great change that happened for school meals, we're calling for a state reimbursement that would add to federal reimbursement to make sure that childcare providers get the highest possible reimbursements for the meals they're serving through the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And the reason why it's so critical that every provider gets access to that highest rate is we know the cost of living and the cost of doing business in California is astronomical. And that is not adequately accounted for in the federal rules that govern program eligibility and program reimbursement. And so in order for providers to have the resources they need to make sure they're nourishing the kids in their care, we want the state to step up and step in and provide some dollars. We're also calling for state funded grants that would mirror the startup and expansion grants that happen for schools. There's startup and expansion grants for breakfast and summer programs. And we'd like to see startup and expansion grants for those federal child meal programs, childcare meal programs. So all told, we think those state investments are going to go really far to make sure that childcare providers are getting fair access to resources, and that those resources are going to help make sure that every child in their care is getting the nutrition they need every day. Okay, so yeah, I hope I'm close to my 5 minutes. I'm going to stop there, and I really look forward to questions and discussion.
Thank you, Tia. I really appreciate that perspective. Jess, I wanted to give you a minute to respond. Just, do you have any thoughts, or do you want to bring up SB 364 at this point?
Yeah, let me just thank you for that. So just really briefly, you know, it's the intention of the legislature to fully fund this work in the budget. And great news, we have more funding from the feds that hopefully, you know, Alexis will be able to share with us. But just recently we received over $1 billion more for our food. We're looking for additional support there, but it's the intention, and we believe we have the resources to make sure this program works, and figuring out some of these details about, you know, funding patterns and cycles are all something that is part of the deliberative process of the budget, and is to be expected. I want to respond to the application and the you know, trying to move from an application, a school meal application process, right now. Before this program and before we were in the pandemic, if you didn't submit an application, even if you were poor, you didn't get the meal. Well, now everybody gets the meal. We still need to collect data. This is right, Tia is correct. But we'd like to do it in a way that is not, it doesn't require information that's not necessary, that is not too invasive, doesn't require data that could scare families from applying. We want to make it simple and useful. Online available would be great, but also by paper if that's how people fill things out, and have as many options as possible. SB 364, which originally had the free meal provisions in it, it now is continuing through the assembly, and it has some changes to the application and the lunchroom environment and culture that are going to be necessary as we move into the universal school meal system. So we hope people will continue to follow that bill. That's where that work is going to be done. And while the other parts of the bill, which include, you know, making sure the free meal for all piece works, supporting scratch kitchens, supporting local good food, regenerative agriculture, making sure that we're using our power of the purse that we've created at the state level to do the best for our environment and for our workers and for our children. And that piece will go into the budget deliberation process, since the governor has made additional recommendations for the budget in that space. It's more appropriate to deal with it there. So we amended it out of the bill, and the rest continues. So absolutely in support of that concept of doing that. One last piece about the child care. We have seen the proposal, really great coalition of people. I think it's like almost 50 organizations signed on for child care, universal meals. You know, this will go through those subcommittee deliberation processes, and you know, and if there's funding, I think it would probably be something that the legislature would like to look at. You have a lot of people in the legislature. If you look at the co-authors alone of SB 364, you can see how much support from your area. You have Assemblymember Berman as a principal co-author. You have Chair Laird, Sub-Chair Laird. He's the sub-chair over this area of law, and has been a great champion and a co-author of that bill. And I also want to do a shout out to Senator Wieckowski, also serving the northern part of your region, and he was also a co-author of the bill and a sub-chair over the farm to school work that was done in the budget. And also Senator Cortese, who supported the bill in committee and was a great cheerleader for the bill, and also is trying to figure out how do we take this category of children who rely on school meals at school and make sure that as they transition into college, they don't have a gap in that summer, and they arrive in the college environment as many of them first generation students, with the support that they need to prevent hunger and homelessness. So there's a lot of great leadership from your area. You guys should all be proud of that. And yeah, I think there's still so much to do. This is the beginning. It is a game changer, but we've got probably a couple more years of deliberating and improving what we have.
Thank you. Thank you both. So stepping back and taking now a national view of things, Alexis, FRAC has been a vocal advocate and resource for community advocates around universal school meals. Please speak to some recent state successes. What are some challenges with implementing universal school meals at a national level?
Yeah, well, thanks again for being here. And I just have to say, you know, FRAC has had the privilege of watching and playing a small supporting role in California's School Meals for All bill passing, and it is an inspiration, and it has helped to create so much momentum that I think will help our federal efforts, which I have been asked to talk about today. So thank you. So yes, FRAC is a strong advocate for healthy school meals for all, which we define as schools offering breakfast and lunch to all students at no charge, regardless of household income. And we see three possible pathways for healthy school meals for all. The first is federal legislation that would cover all schools across the country. The second path is state legislation, where each individual state would pass healthy school meals for all legislation. And then the third pathway could be incremental expansion of current programs until all students are reached. And an example of that could be continuing to expand the community eligibility provision, which allows high poverty schools and districts to provide meals at no charge to all students. But focusing today on passing federal legislation, FRAC for over the last year has partnered with over 20 other national organizations to lobby on behalf of healthy school meals for all nationwide. And those organizations represent anti-hunger organizations, health organizations, unions, child advocacy organizations that all believe that healthy school meals for all support academic achievement and is the next logical step for school nutrition. So together we lobbied for the inclusion of healthy school meals for all in the Build Back Better Act. And unfortunately, that was not included in the final package, but we were able to make some improvements for school nutrition above and beyond what had been included in the president's original American Families Plan that we feel really good about. Our advocacy led to better nutrition provisions to support middle school and high schools through the community eligibility provision, along with the option for statewide community eligibility provision, which we think will make it easier for states to pass universal school meal bills going forward. So as you likely know, the Build Back Better Act has yet to pass and has become very contentious, but we are optimistic that some version of the package will ultimately pass and are hopeful that the child nutrition provisions will remain included. They are relatively much smaller cost than some of the other components of the plan. And so we're hopeful that they will not be cut as the final bill is negotiated. So I was asked to talk about some of the challenges of passing healthy school meals for all at a national level. And I would say the first, I think, is cost. It will cost approximately $80 billion over 10 years to provide free school meals for all students across the country. Now, we believe that that investment is needed and it's critical to supporting academic achievement and advancing racial equity. So that cost does not deter us at all, but it's a cost out there. Another challenge is the perception among some lawmakers that the money should be targeted to very low income students and don't like the idea of providing free meals to children from wealthy families. Even though it's the universal access to those meals that would eliminate the stigma that sometimes exists with the school meal program and would really benefit the school environment overall. I wanted to share with you that over the last few months, FRAC has done some message testing around healthy school meals for all. We've conducted focus groups and a public opinion survey, and the findings are really encouraging. Most voters do support free healthy school meals for all. They understand the stigma and access issues that currently exist, and they seem to intuitively understand that hungry children don't have the focus and energy to get the most out of their time at school. In terms of state progress towards healthy school meals for all, California and Maine, which passed their school meals for all legislation, maybe minutes or hours, it was finalized after California, you were right there together, have created so much momentum for this issue. And I wanted to share with you that there are now active campaigns for healthy school meals for all in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Maryland, Colorado, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Colorado. And I think even more states will take up campaigns shortly. So this is an issue that is growing. I think it is well positioned. And I think we are going to make a lot of progress around this. And it's a big priority for FRAC. And so we will continue to look for legislative vehicles to make nationwide healthy school meals for all a reality. And just in closing, I wanted to talk about or mention that we have an upcoming national anti-hunger policy conference that we do in partnership with Feeding America, and we'll be releasing a report on school breakfast and lunch next week. And I'll just put information about that in the chat. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Alexis. I didn't realize Maine was so close to us in passing.
Well, actually, there were emails back and forth, and we had to verify, we had to get the measuring tape out to see, did we do it, and it was so important to California to be able to say we were the first, because we had been saying we're going to be the first. Even if we weren't the first, we still have 12% of all the nation's kids covered, and that's a big deal. I just want to say one little thing about what Alexis said, and that is, we say, oh, we're going to serve the poorest if we go with the smaller version, the CEP only version, as WMCA call it. But that's not true. In any intervention we have on poverty, if we don't make it accessible to everybody, we leave behind the very poorest, the most disenfranchised, the people who are afraid, the people who can't access what you have. And so if you say we're going to serve the poorest, that's a lie. It is a lie. You won't serve families like mine. And part of this is my own personal journey of being able to not blame my parents, right, for applying for help that I should have had. I had to kind of come through that myself to be able to embrace this policy. And all of you have to do that too. You have to forgive people like my parents who were too disenfranchised, too afraid to get the help that I deserved, the meal that had my name on it that I didn't get. We have to say that. So don't let people lie and say we're serving the poorest by requiring a school meal application for a meal anymore, because that's not true. And maybe it's a lie you're not intending to say, but you need to own it now that I've told you, now that we've told you. we will serve the poorest when we serve all children. And so that's something I just want to highlight. I think I just love that FRAC has stayed true to this issue, and among great pressure from others nationally. Thank you. We couldn't have done with this without you, and this will become a national policy. Do or die. We're here for this. So we're going to serve the poorest, and we're going to do that through universal meals.
Thank you, Jess. I teared up a little bit here. So I think it's time for some questions. Kathleen, I'll invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I run a foundation called Healthier Kids Foundation. And I will say that language in our county is also a real barrier. 2/3 of our children, we have the highest percentage of children in California that have one parent born outside the United States. So I'm always focused on language as well as economic abilities. But my question was, I was on a call yesterday and the superintendent was talking about TK and that there isn't going to be extra money for all the schools to put TK in place. Are we going to have this issue where we may have superintendents speaking against this effort because they're not all going to be funded for it?
Superintendents will say what they need to say. We have heard from some superintendents, they feel like the food supply chain issue and the worker shortages and things like that are causing challenges. But we keep checking every month. We have monthly implementation meetings with CDE, and the dollars are coming in, and it's clear that we have enough money. It's going to take some time for people to get used to that, though, and feel confident in that. And so that's the little rough ride on anything you do big, implementing anything big. It's gonna have a bit of that kind of getting adjusted to.
And we can say there is total funding for this.
Yes, and that it's the intention of the legislature to revisit this and make sure that there is. That's not going to stop some legislators. You heard the people in Wisconsin that said we don't want to spoil children by making sure that they don't go hungry. So it's California, we're diverse, we have diverse views. There are going to be people who will say we can't do this even when they can. So we just have to be prepared for that, and and understand that this will be a program hopefully we'll only have to defend for a couple of years, and then it will just become commonplace, I hope.
No, I just want to be able to say that it's not going to matter whether you're a basic aid school or non-basic aid. There is funding for all schools. And sorry, I didn't know the answer to that, so thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. We actually have received a couple of questions from local school districts about that same issue, so I appreciate it. Alexis, we had a question come up about paths beyond Build Back Better if that is not successful. Do you mind digging a little deeper into possible alternatives?
Well, after Build Back Better is decided, or perhaps starting to be on a parallel track, is child nutrition reauthorization. That happens regularly, but hasn't successfully led to any real change in quite a while. But that is the next vehicle where we will look to do more work around healthy school meals for all. The challenge there is that they normally don't deal with the size of packages that would be required for the price tag of healthy school meals for all to pass, but we'll definitely be advocating for it. And there might be opportunities to build on what was included in hopefully Build Back Better to continue to expand programs to reach more students. So child nutrition reauthorization is coming up. And then we are thinking big about every kind of moving legislative vehicle in the next couple of years and how healthy school meals could be a part of it.
Thank you. So in conclusion, if there aren't any other questions, feel free to put your question in the chat. I'll just ask each one of our panelists to state just 1 or 2 sentences. What's next? What's next for you I know you sort of gave a view of this already, but just in conclusion, what's next and how are you going to do it? Thank you.
Jess, you want to jump in? Or you want to wrap us up? I can go first. So I will say our Food with Care bill is being introduced next week. I welcome all of you to visit our website, nourishca.org, or contact me directly. I'll put my email in the chat if you want to get looped in to action alerts and updates about that or about any of the items on our legislative agenda. And I will say, picking up on some of the threads of this conversation, access means so much more than a meal being somewhere on your school campus and that meal being free. Access is, do you have enough time to eat? Access is, do you feel like you can safely go to that place and get a meal? Access is, do you know that the meal is available? You know, speaking to Jess's earlier point, access is the food a cultural fit for you? Is it something that you want to eat? And so I think we have started down this really exciting road of making sure that everyone has access. And we need to think about access from every different perspective. And so we are incredibly excited this year, next year, the following years to keep coming back to this issue until access is real and meaningful for every kid across our state. So I'll throw my email in the chat, and I welcome any questions or thoughts or suggestions y'all have. Just look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Tia. Jess?
Sure, great points, Tia, and you know, time to eat is definitely being considered. We have more kids coming through the line now, so we're going to have to figure out how to actually make sure that they get through even and get a chance to eat the food. So that's definitely on the list of things we're looking at. My boss is just myopically concerned about the next step. She wants to be able to make sure that if we're spending California's money, we're buying California's food. And we're buying that food with the values of California. That's earth friendly, climate friendly, worker friendly, local, and creates, you know, a sustainable path for kids to have the most nutritious, most fresh food prepared in their own school with Scratch Kitchen. And so you're going to see a lot of that work in the budget this year. We hope if everything goes as planned, as hoped. And then, you know, and I'll say, we hope 364 gets passed. It's looking both at school meals and also at the out of school time. We can't forget, kids are still going hungry during the winter months, during the summer months at really high rates, and any amount of hunger is bad for them in their childhood and beyond, and it's bad for all of us. So we want to look at that, at the better out of school time boost nutrition program we'd like to establish and to maximize pandemic EBT. Great work going on there, and thank you, California Association of Food Banks, for your leadership in helping get that done, and FRAC, you too. So we want to look at those, and you know, we all need to lean into the federal campaign to move free meals for all as far as we can, support our neighbor states. Washington State just made a big leap last night on some additional school meals legislation. We need to support our neighbor states, make sure we're moving forward federally, and there's a lot to do, and the Silicon Valley and your community is so powerful and important in this fight. So keep up the great work, keep the big visions of what you're asking for. Don't concede because people say it's not possible. You have never done that, and we're hoping and counting on you guys to keep doing that, and support your leaders. Your assembly members, your senators, they are here for it. This is an anti-hunger legislature. They love your work in this space. So please continue to work with us.
Thank you. Alexis, final word.
Yeah, final word. Well, FRAC wants to support California's implementation of the legislation in any way possible, because we want this to be implemented so well that the rest of the states see that this is possible and can easily be done in their states as well. FRAC will also continue to coordinate a group of the other state campaigns that are working on passing healthy school meals for all, so that we can help share resources and strategy amongst those states. And I also just want to echo Jess's call to action around Build Back Better, to please weigh in and help that get across the finish line, because it will help all of our efforts. And in California, Representative Lofgren and some of your other great advocates really need to hear from this community, and it will mean so much in hopefully getting that passed. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our panelists. And guests, please feel free to do an emoji or do a clap for all these wonderful speakers today. Thank you. I will now hand things over to my colleague, Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Monaco. I'm the manager of advocacy here at Second Harvest of Silicon Valley. I just want to touch a little bit about summer meals today. So when schools are closed, many children in our region lose access to healthy and nutritious meals, just as our wonderful panel so greatly emphasized. So during the summer months, schools, libraries, and other community organizations step up to fill in that gap. And here in our region of San Mateo and Santa Clara counties in summer 2021, we had 160 summer meal locations that were open to the public so that any child could go and get a meal at that site. And those 160 sites combined served more than 1.8 million meals this summer. So that is very, very impressive. And it really just underscores the need for this nutrition during the summer months. Of course, the ongoing pandemic continues to impact summer activities. So many summer camps and other types of activities were not open and operating in person this year. But as a response, the United States Department of Agriculture implemented several waivers, which allowed for some flexibility in how the summer meals were able to be served. It allowed for grab-and-go meal service so that families could come up to a site, grab a meal, take it home, and eat it there. It allowed for families to pick up multiple days worth of meals for their family at once, so they didn't have to keep coming back to the site day after day after day. They could just pick up a week of meals if they wanted to. It allowed for caregivers to pick up meals without their children being present, and it removed the area eligibility requirement for summer meal sites. This particular waiver was really impactful here in our region because of the very, very high cost of living. In a normal year, a summer meal site needs to be located in an area where 50% of the surrounding student body is participating in free and reduced price meals. Again, as our panel illustrated, that is an extremely difficult threshold for families in our community to reach. That is based on the federal poverty guideline that does not take into consideration the very high cost of living here in our community. So what we typically see during the summer is that we have these very deep pockets of poverty throughout our two-county region where summer meal sites are able to be located, but we have huge swaths where there are still children who need access to healthy meals who aren't able to access them. Of course, to increase access to summer meals, increase knowledge and awareness of summer meals, Second Harvest of Silicon Valley launches a very wide-reaching marketing campaign in order to spread the word. Last summer, we used social media ads in multiple languages. We had Chinese, English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Russian. We used our grocery distribution network and put printed flyers in grocery boxes during the very beginning of the summer months. We put together a social media press kit so that our community partners could have sample digital flyers, sample social media posts, and other materials that they could adapt and use to promote summer meals in their own communities. And we operated a texting number where clients could send a text message and receive a link to the closest summer meal site that was near them. In addition to all of this, we also wrote op-eds, we were on Telemundo, we did a lot. There were a lot of activities happening, and we used every channel that we could think of in order to spread the word about summer meals. Of course, at the heart of that marketing campaign is our Meals for Kids map that we host on our website. So families can go to our website, they can search by their zip code, by their address, or maybe their workplace, whatever is easiest for them, and they can find the closest summer meal location to them. And last summer, in the months of June and July, our map received more than 50,000 views, so it is very well utilized. And now I'm going to take the opportunity to pass on over to Doreen from the YMCA of Silicon Valley to talk about how her organization works on the ground to distribute summer meals.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone here for their advocacy today. So for the past 12 years, the YMCA has been a USDA year-round meal sponsor, not just in summer meals, but also leveraging school meals, after school meals, that is. And so we partner to help sponsor agencies like the Santa Clara County Library, San Mateo Library, our San Jose Public Libraries, children's shelters, Gilroy Youth Center, and MACLA local community group, as well as churches like the Cathedral of Faith. In sum, last year, we served 581,000 meals at 56 sites, including 2 of our senior nutrition programs in Morgan Hill and Gilroy. And I'll talk a little bit about more about what we do in the summertime. Next slide. So here are some fun pictures. Second Harvest not only helps us with getting the information out, but utilizing the ability to sponsor adult meals has been incredible. I'll give you a case in point at Morgan Hill. Their service in the summertime increased by 250% because of the non-congregate grab and go ability. We had drive-through dinners and we served meals 7 days a week, pick up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So the advocacy is really important to continue to lower the threshold for qualification, as well as continue the ability for non-congregate grab and go meals. I want to also give a shout out to our school districts like Santa Clara Unified, who's on the call today, who helps us sponsor after school and summer meals in our summer programs and that out of school time, which is really vital. For many of our kids, the last meal they have in the school or community setting may be the last full and complete meal they have until the next day when they return to school. Next slide. We're very grateful for Second Harvest because through their support, we were able to serve 6,922 adult meals. We know that when there is food insecurity with children, oftentimes there's food insecurity with adults. So in total this past summer, we were at 27 locations and served a total of 116,722 meals to be exact. We hope to be at 35 sites this summer. More San Jose libraries are coming on board. I encourage community centers like libraries to seek out sponsorship, become their own sponsor, because truly this is how we ensure food access and food security during that critical out of school time. Next slide. So never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And this is such a powerful quote because this is what we're doing right here, right now, not just in response to the pandemic, but in response to, really like Tracy shared, food access is, it shouldn't be a privilege. It is. Everyone needs food to survive and be their best selves. And so I thank everyone for being here. Become sponsors, reach out to your sponsors, and continue the good work to ensure every kid has food every day. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Doreen. We are so grateful for the long time, amazing partnership that the YMCA Silicon Valley has with us and all of the wonderful work that you do to feed so many kids throughout the year. Thank you. I'm just going to wrap up my portion by giving a little bit of an update about pandemic EBT. So the second round of pandemic EBT was distributed this past fall, so fall of 2021. And as a reminder, in case anyone is unaware, pandemic EBT is a debit card that was issued to families if a school-age child was normally eligible for free and reduced price meals, or if a young child from the ages of 0 to 6 was in a household that was receiving CalFresh. So pandemic EBT was meant to provide a grocery benefit to replace the approximate value of the school meals that they would have received if school was in person. And again, this was covering last school year benefits were mailed out this fall. So the benefits were mailed out to just under 5 million children in the state of California. And as of January of 2022, it has an approximately 81% activation rate. So that's actually very high. And more than $3.8 billion of benefits have been spent just this past fall, just from Pandemic EBT 2.0. So really, this is an extremely effective method of getting grocery benefit access to families at a time when they really need it most. And it also, as you can see, it goes a long way to support our local economies. Just want to end off with a few advocacy opportunities. The panel mentioned SB 364, and Jess already gave a little bit of information about the Better Out of School Time EBT portion of that bill, or Boost EBT. So Boost EBT would build on the success of pandemic EBT and provide a grocery benefit card to low-income families whenever schools are closed, whether that closure is planned, such as summer break, or it's unplanned, such as when wildfires cause poor air quality and our schools have to shut for that reason. We're also continuing to advocate for the extension of the COVID-19 waivers, which have allowed for additional flexibility in how school and summer meals are served. And at this time, I'm going to hand it off to Maria from our Food Connection team. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, good morning. My name is Maria. I am with the Food Connection team. I just want to say that I'm loving everyone's energy on this call. So hopefully I could keep up with it. All right, let me see. Where are my notes? Here they are. So as I mentioned, I am with the Food Connection team. We are a team of 18. We do provide assistance for a referral for free groceries and also for CalFresh application assistance. For those of you that are on the call that do not know what CalFresh is, even though I feel like we all do, CalFresh, also known as SNAP, food stamps, EBT, is if you do qualify, you get something that looks very similar to a debit card and allows you to go to most grocery stores to buy the food that you need. And our team of 18, we do connect our clients to these programs, to both free groceries and also CalFresh. We do speak in different languages, so Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese, Tagalog, and we can connect to other languages through our language line. There are different ways that we do CalFresh outreach in the community, so I'm just going to mention a few of them. So we do have our community outreach network, CON. This is a network of our outreach partners who are committed to ending hunger through shared resources in both Santa Clara and San Mateo County. And we really aim to strengthen the existing relationships we have, but also we want to build new relationships. So if you're on this call and we're not already partnered up with you, please connect with me and I'll make sure that we are able to connect you to the resources that you need so that you could connect your clients to our resources. We just want to make sure that our outreach partners can continue to promote food assistance through our services. And we do have our medical partners. So with our medical partners, we do provide universal screening and they do refer patients to us so that we're able again to connect them to our programs. And we do outreach within our own distributions. So we do try to go out there twice a year to most of our distributions and also make sure that we hand out plenty of flyers. And due to the pandemic, we have kind of had to switch gears in the way that our team is doing outreach right now. So we do have a lot of virtual outreach going on and also have definitely different social media campaigns. We just want to make sure that we are aiming to connect to clients virtually, even if we can't see them in person. Next slide. All right, so here at Second Harvest, we are strongly advocating for the passages of these bills here. So we have SB 464, Food for All, which would expand food insecurity among low-income California immigrants. And then we also have SB S41, CalFresh for college students, which would make CalFresh benefits more accessible for low-income college students. I do want to mention that we do have a food distribution at almost every single major college or university at both San Mateo and Santa Clara County. We also have a permanent pantry at San Jose State. And I also want to mention that San Jose State is one of our strongest outreach partners. They are daily referring students to us and we're making sure that we can connect them to the resources that they need, specifically CalFresh. And at this moment, I'd like to hand it back to Tracy Weatherby.
Thank you so much, Maria. And yeah, we do have this variety of efforts. CalFresh is always an interesting and sometimes challenging program for us. Many of the regulations are made at the federal level, but then there are also improvements that can be made at the state level. And to have such an amazing benefit for people who are experiencing food insecurity and then not to have it more universally available to those in need is a real problem. So that first bill that Maria described will provide a CalFresh-like benefit at the state level for immigrants who don't qualify at the under the federal program. And then the last one we wanted to highlight is there are important things the state could be doing, like enrolling people who are leaving incarceration into CalFresh right away. You pretty much know someone who's leaving prison is going to be struggling, right? They don't have a job, they don't have a place to live. We can at least ensure that they have access to food benefits that they are eligible for. But I want to switch gears a little bit and move into talking about how we're getting the food we're using in order to provide food to our community. And it has been a real roller coaster the last few years. During the pandemic, the federal government did, frankly, an amazing job of providing food to the country. It wasn't always in the form we wanted it. It wasn't perfect, but there was a lot of it flowing around. And this year we are seeing 50% less food coming in the form of government commodities. So one of the key things that our team and a lot of our partners is advocating for is another $900 million in federal funding for what's called TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. And one of the ways that we are filling in that gap is our relationship with the California Association of Food Banks connects us to farmers where we can get fresh produce at a very low cost. We're essentially paying picking fees in order to get access to produce that might otherwise not be utilized. And a lot of it is just gorgeous. You know, you should see some of the pictures of the produce that we're able to provide our clients. 50% typically of what we provide is fresh produce, and we're really proud of that because we feel like that really contributes to the nutrition of our community. The other piece we're having to fill in is our purchased food budget is about double what it was pre-pandemic. So we are looking to have an expansion of those federal food sources. And the other area where we need assistance is from the state. CalFood is an amazing program that allows food banks to be reimbursed for foods they purchase that are grown in California. Frankly, California had not invested much in this program pre-pandemic. They were a real laggard nationally. They invested a fair amount last year, but a lot of it in kind of a boxed form that made it a little difficult for some food banks to use and to provide the foods that our clients most wanted. So what we're asking for this year is that CalFood become a $60 million a year ongoing program, and that there be an additional $60 million this year that would take into account the fact that need is still so incredibly high and that our federal sources are lagging. We're also looking for $180 million in one-time capacity improvements and climate resilience. A lot of food banks, including our own, we're looking at a new unified facility to allow us to better serve the community more efficiently. And we are not alone. Food banks need to have access to more modern facilities that are more appropriate for rescuing all of this perishable food. We want to invest in a lot of climate friendly things like solar panels and plug-in tractor trailers that can be working off of electricity when they are homed back at our warehouses. We also want to see an increase in state disaster food assistance program. This seems comparatively small, but it's very important to the communities that get hit by natural disasters. We'd like to increase that amount to $10 million. This applies to food banks that are responding to wildfires, floods, earthquakes, things of that sort. And I don't think I have to tell anyone on this call how much more common those disasters have become in California. The other source that is really important to us and that we're seeing a lot of change in is food rescue. Some of you may have heard the term SB 1383. This was a bill that was passed a number of years ago and just started implementation in January of this year. For context, we have been, essentially food banks come from a world of rescuing food. That's how most food banks started. And so we've been doing it for years and increasing the amount that we're able to rescue year over year. Over 70% of the food that we provide is either donated or rescued. But if you look even just at the piece that is coming from wholesalers, manufacturers, grocery retail, that has continued to increase and now represents a very large amount of the pounds that we have. SB 1383 is going to require more food generators to donate food that is close to expiration and can be kept out of landfills by being donated a little early when it is still really helpful for our communities. So we are working with food generators, with our counties, with our cities to ensure that we can be a big part of the solution in helping to ensure that more of that food is rescued. There are a couple of different ways that we do it. If we have very large food distributors or food manufacturers, we pick up in our own tractor trailers on a regular basis. We then bring that food back, get it sorted, and get it out to our distribution sites and to our clients. But another piece of what we do is that we partner our partners up to pick up the food, and we create the infrastructure that allows them to do that efficiently. Feeding America often has kind of agreements we can work with, and we work with a local community partner to set up a schedule where they can pick up. We do their food safety training. We have applications that allow them to report very easily so we can get those required reports back to the food generators. So that's a little bit about where we're going with food rescue. I feel like this entire year is about a lot of change, a lot of progress, a lot of challenge. And I am so impressed by all of the passion of all of our partners and panelists. We are really lucky to be in a community where there are so many people really engaged in these issues and in working to really find solutions. So we have a couple minutes for questions. If people have any questions,